pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. On honor of the Texas flag, I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Commissioner Russo is going to do the invocation.
Dear God, we come before you today to transact business for this county. We have many people here today, commissioners, county judge, members of the community. We just ask for wisdom to do your will. We all want to serve. We all want to improve the conditions of this community. We don't all agree on the way to do that, but we do all have the best interests, I believe, at heart. So just grant us your wisdom and grace to fulfill this task today. We ask for blessings for our community and for our country, which we sorely need. We ask all of this in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Good morning. Roll call.
Commissioner Cheney. Here. Commissioner Cashmore.
Here.
Commissioner Russo.
Here.
Commissioner Lawler.
Here.
Judge Mills.
Here. We do have a quorum. As citizens to be heard, I believe Andrew Kane is on Zoom. Is that right, Mr. Kane?
Yes, sir. Can you
Andrew,
hear me?
you on?
Yes.
Go
Thank
ahead,
you.
sir. 5
Andrew
minutes.
Kane,
5
Andrew
minutes.
Kane, 2106 Lakeview Drive. If we create a citizens committee to build race cars, I would expect they'd build race cars, despite not building a good race car because they're not industry experts. That's what we're going to end up doing here with these tax abatements. We're not going to have industry experts in development. So what is the meaning of an abatement? I looked it up. An abatement is an act or process of reducing something that should legally happen. Why do we pay taxes? We pay taxes to evenly share our legal responsibilities to provide infrastructure and other local services required for our local governments to perform the basic services to the citizens. Later in this meeting, we will hear a debate about talking points about creating a non-expertise citizen committee and guidelines regarding future tax abatements, which you will not hear from a single speaker is a solid reason why we need these abatements and why we need them now. So let's think about why a community would forgive taxes as they are legally owed by development. Understand every property in the county, whether it be a home or commercial property, will cost the county money to provide services for that property. So why would we want to forgive the cost of those services to that developer and pass that expense on to the existing homeowners and existing businesses? A simple reason, and the most understandable one, is we would do an abatement to a new developer in order to attract what would not naturally come without doing so, but only if we really needed development because our community is not experiencing it organically. So in general, it would be wise to offer incentives for development when nothing is coming. We really need it and others around us are experiencing it and that development is not here. Simple supply and demand. So Tivoli actually might want to think about some abatements because that town just is not growing the past few decades, despite a dollar store they just recently got. I will ask again, please, someone tell me why we need to consider tax abatements. This is an honest question and no one has answered it and no one will today. You cannot provide a solid reason for this. We've all heard, and this court is on record several times in the past 2 years, that we have an almost uncontrollable growth coming and there's nothing we can do to stop it. In fact, we needed to build that 3-story courthouse just to prepare for this future growth that is coming. We need to improve and expand all of our services like water, sewer, roads, bridges, education, medical, internet, emergency services, and most importantly, stormwater runoff to reduce flooding immediately to prepare for this impending growth that we cannot stop. Those speaking for this have seen a few silly PowerPoint slides and sales pitches from those who do not live in this community, catchphrases and nice sales pitches. The reality is taxes put upon for development are meant to help pay for the burden on the community for those services. There's no one in this room that has more development experience ongoing today than myself. I promise you, I speak with knowledge, expertise, and experience, more knowledge, expertise, and experience than the salespeople who will pitch a need for tax abatements. I cannot tell you a tax abatement or opportunity zone that ever played a minuscule part of a decision to develop or not. The total cost to develop, build, and operate a new venture is tremendous. An abatement, as large or attractive as it might sound, is a rounding error in the reality of an amount of investment it takes to develop, build, and operate a venture of any kind. Well, of course, saving a few $100,000 here or there, if you can, is nice. It's a little bonus to the developer's pocket, but it won't entice a failed business plan to come here. I and every investor will only develop a location if it is feasible to do so. Incentives never make a failed business plan or opportunity into a winner. It defies logic to even think it would ever convince an investor to do so because of an abatement. We will only develop where there is a need and it's feasible to do so. So I sit and watch all the PowerPoints and talks we've had the past few months by non-developers, paid consultants like Kim Faust and Michael Mead, the Chamber or the EDC, and I laugh at y'all. Why? Because y'all are way in over your skis when it comes to understanding basic principles, what tools it takes to really affect the laws of supply and demand or a free market. Understand one simple principle. A development is coming if it is feasible and the need is there. Pulling money out of the taxpayers' pockets to put in the pocket of a developer will never result in attracting a development that isn't already feasible on its own, especially in a county when development is coming and we cannot stop it, like I've claimed for 2 years already. So do not discount their fair and legal expense they will burden the community with. If you really want to do great things for your county, do your jobs. Figure out how to prepare our county's infrastructure needs and how we're going to pay for it. Concentrate on roads, bridges, and flood prevention, and stay out of the free market and development in which you have zero qualifications to do so and no ability to control. Do not get a committee of citizens tasked with the task of deciding and proposing tax abatements who have no expertise or experience to do so, and offer generous deals or simply the other deal, which in no meaningful way affects their decision making and hence is wasteful and inefficient to our community making the deal. The chief consequences of incentives and tax abatements is enrich corporate coffers and impoverish taxpayers. Local government has no business in business and needs to stay out of the way of business if we want all business to be successful. Thank you.
5 minutes is up.
Thank you.
I see several other people with these wanting to speak about agenda item 13, which is what Mr. Kane spoke about. Do you want to do it now or do you want to wait? All of you? Okay. Any other presentation? I don't have it. So we do have a presentation from AgriLife Extension to introduce a new hire, Alicia Dewald.
Good morning, Judge. Good morning, Commissioners. We wanted to come by today to introduce our new hire, our 4-H program assistant, Alicia Dewald. She started right the day before Thanksgiving and has been learning quite quickly, and we're excited to have her a part of the team. So we wanted to let you know that if you're asking a 4-H question, she might be answering it pretty soon. And one more thing.
We also wanted to encourage you to attend the Judges and Commissioners Conference, which is Thursday in Edna. And then as your reward, come to our open house on Friday from 11 to 1. The open house is open to the public, refreshments, not lunch.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome,
aboard,
Alicia.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
I have, no, I don't.
Okay, under consent items, I just would like to ask if anyone from the Holland Safe Company is here. I don't think so. Okay. But we do have, I want to recognize Holland Safe Company for providing a safe value of $1,331 for use as a time capsule in the new courthouse. Quite a gift. And I'm sure that in 50 years, when they open that safe, everything will be in good condition instead of deteriorated condition. I also would like to recognize Commissioner Russo for a $500 donation to the airport fly-in. I understand it was a real success. And also GSM Insurance for a $500 donation offset expenses also. Okay, with that said, do I have a motion?
Move to approve the consent agenda.
I second that.
Motion made and seconded. Roll call.
Commissioner Cheney,
Aye.
Commissioner Castro.
Aye.
Commissioner Russo.
Aye.
Commissioner Lava.
Aye.
Judge Mills.
Aye. Unanimous. Make a motion to approve the 2022 road materials bid.
Second.
Second, Commissioner Lawler.
Commissioner-
Could we
ahead.
discuss something?
Yes.
Just for future reference, David, the font was extremely small on this, so I really couldn't read these numbers. That might be a faction age, but also I think this was like a font 4 or
I
something.
couldn't read it either.
Okay.
Young typer.
Could you just give us the bottom line then, the summary, who you're selecting, or are there multiple vendors?
There are multiple.
Okay,
And they're highlighted on this. I can-
okay, so just going forward, if you
Yeah.
can just
Sure,
have larger font, please.
I'll do it
Thank you.
They're gonna select them all, huh?
mostly or something. Yeah. And just so you know, prices are up. Not a surprise, but
The prices are what?
up
How much are they up, David?
10%.
I move to
What's
approve the.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
What's the total bottom line for the year's worth of material bids?
Well, the bottom line is what is in my budget, which is, I don't even know what it is, 900,000, 800,000.
And I mean, on this bid, the total number is,
This is the bid of who we use next
so
year.
this is more like a per unit bid, so not a total dollar number bid. Okay.
I move to approve the 2022 road materials bridge.
I'll second that.
It's already been
Oh, you
done.
did?
Motion made and seconded. A roll call.
Commissioner Cheney.
Aye.
Commissioner Castro.
Aye.
Commissioner Russo.
Aye.
Commissioner Lava.
Aye.
Judge Mills.
Aye. Unanimous. Item number 9.
I move to approve authorizing the county engineer to initiate contract negotiations with the selected consulting firms based on the recommendation from the Evaluation Rating Committee on submitted qualifications for engineering surveying services for the Lamar Beach Road at 4th Street drainage study, beginning with the highest rated firm and continuing with the next highest rated firm until a satisfactory agreement on the scope of work and cost of services can be reached, with the understanding that the final contract must be submitted to the Commissioner's Court for approval.
I'll second that.
Motion made and seconded. Commissioner Cheney.
I have a question, David. Who were the raters on this?
D. McClellan was a rater. Cat rated.
Did you say Cat Como?
Como. Russell Cole, Commissioner Casterline, and Betty Stiles.
And Hanson was the pick.
Hanson was the highest rated, yes.
And who was the first person, did you say? D somebody?
D. McClellan.
Oh, okay.
Well,
Thank you.
Roll call.
Commissioner Cheney.
aye.
Commissioner Castro.
Aye.
Commissioner Russo.
Aye.
Commissioner Lava.
Aye.
Judge Mills.
Aye. Item number 10.
Move to approve request for variance on county subdivision regulations on the minimum lot size at 430 Copano Ridge Road to replat 2 lots and 2 partial lots into 1 lot. I'll second that.
Motion made and seconded. Commissioner Cheney. Any discussion?
I
was going to ask if Kat was on the line. I'm going to give her usual summary.
I am.
Kat, could
and I'd be
you
happy
just
to-
kind of quickly walk us through it?
Yes, ma'am. This is a developed lot. The owner is seeking to combine these multiple lots into 1 lot formally so that he can upgrade the septic system, which is a requirement from TCEQ in order to change from a single-family structure into a multifamily structure to allow any type of deed partition. So it is the lot is about 500 square feet short of the minimum requirement from the county, but the septic design for the upgrades has been submitted to environmental health for approval and has been reviewed and approved.
Any further discussion? Roll call.
Commissioner Cheney,
Aye.
Commissioner Castro,
Aye.
Commissioner Russo,
Aye.
Commissioner Lava,
Aye.
Judge Mills.
Aye. Unanimous. Item number 11.
I move to approve. I move to approve resolution R 30 2021, authorizing the award of professional services contract to DRD Engineering to provide mechanical, electrical, and plumbing engineering services to the new Workforce Development and Enterprise Entrepreneurship Center building located on 2000 Highway 35 North.
Second.
Motion made and second, Commissioner Castleline. Any discussion?
Was there a rating committee on this one, John?
Yes, there was, but it was done before I took over this project.
Okay.
I'm not sure who's on it.
It was, I was on that.
Jack was one of them.
Yeah, I was on it. It was pretty simple. It was the only one that we had, the only one that was interested, but they
Exactly,
met all the criteria quite well.
exactly.
Any further discussion? Not roll call.
Commissioner Cheney,
Aye.
Commissioner Castro,
Aye.
Commissioner Russo,
Aye.
Commissioner Lava,
Aye.
Judge Mills.
Aye. Unanimous. Item 12.
I move to authorize the county judge, excuse me, to provide written instruction to Grant Works to prepare a proposed amendment for the General Land Office GLO contract number 20065098 C270 to request that funds or any portion of the funds in the amount of $10,469,646 previously awarded for a micro hospital be reallocated to cover overages that may occur in other projects approved in the C270 grant.
Motion made. Do I have a second?
I'll second that. But, I have a question, Jen. Should that be written where it could be used on other approved?
I'm sorry?
Yes.
Well,
Other GLO, you mean, or?
yeah, other stuff under the program, which is drainage and some other things. To me, I don't get that sense when I read it. But
Is the 270 contract, does that include the entire $53 million that we were awarded last
Yeah.
year?
Yes, it does have a list of all the projects that have been already approved.
So about 2/3 of that is roads and drainage and the other third is a grab bag. And what we're saying is it could be reallocated to anything in that whole universe.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And to the maximum of the currently approved dollars for the micro hospital, which is the over 10 million. But we don't anticipate that the GLO will need to use all of that for overages, but this would enable us to do the most with the projects that have already been approved, even taking into account the prices have gone up over time.
And we have had some indication, I assume, from GLO that they're sympathetic to this request, that they don't mind the idea of reallocating this money.
We visited with Grant Works, and Judge Mills could probably speak better to this. But we did visit with Grant Works, who has been in contact with staff at GLO. And the thought is that it's a lot easier for us to propose and for them to accept a change in scope when it relates back to projects that have already been approved than to try to do something that is new or would take even more time. So this should be something that GLO would find to be reasonable and acceptable.
So what we're really saying is, if we run short in an approved project, this is not for new projects. This is just for approved projects under the C270.
Right.
That's
Okay.
correct.
As you well know, that we were awarded $10,469,646 for a micro hospital. And because of since we submitted that and got the grant, we've been fortunate with a new 24-hour, 7-day-a-week emergency room and now an urgent care. So with the doctors and providers that we already have in Aransas County, healthcare is fairly well taken care of. We do still need to look into help for the people that are not insured and in need of medical services. And I had a whole prepared list or statement, but because of the discussion before this, it's kind of taken care of. We need lower cost medical services for the people in Aransas County. And I believe we can still work with Amistad in bringing that federally qualified health care clinic to Aransas County without GLO, and I think we can do it faster and quite frankly, more efficiently.
Is,
Oh, sorry about that. How about now? Oh, I just need to get real close. All right. I was wondering why the ladies' voices were louder than mine. Now I know.
is Pat Arnold with us today?
No, but she worked with us on this and we talked to her about the change and she thought it was a great idea of going forward with Amistad in another direction instead of going with these grant, which we would have a problem probably getting.
Well, what I understood her to be telling us a couple of weeks ago when she spoke to us was that certainly in the case of Amistad, she was confident that they would be coming here with or without the grant, that she didn't feel like giving up on the grant would have any impact on the Amistad development. I'm not sure if she told us what she thought about the ER expansion, but did you get the impression that she also thought we could persuade CCMC to expand the ER as needed, even if we don't help them out with grant money?
Yes, because they're a for-profit organization. They have the means to do the extension themselves. They were just trying to work with us on the hospital.
So we should be able to reallocate these funds, help out with the other projects, especially roads and drainage, and not hurt the current plans to improve medical services in the county.
Yes, ma'am.
They're just ongoing without needing to involve the GLO money, which is an advantage.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, excuse me. Patricia Arnold just texted and said she agrees with this. Thank you, Patricia.
Okay. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Commissioner Cheney.
Aye.
Commissioner Castro.
Aye.
Commissioner Russo.
Aye.
Commissioner Lava.
Aye.
Judge Mills.
Aye, unanimous. Okay, item 13. Discuss, approve, disapprove. I'll make the motion to approve the adoption of resolution R 27, 2021, approving and adopting Aransas County Economic Development Policy, which would include guidelines and criteria for the tax abatement and authorized by Chapter 312 of the Texas Code, guidelines and criteria for Texas rebate agreements and other incentives as authorized by Chapter 381 of the Local Government Code, the creation of Economic Development Evaluation Committee, the adoption of forms, and providing for severability, repealer, and savings of effective date. I also have a statement that I'd like to read about this.
I'll second.
Motion made and seconded by Commissioner Castleline. In October and November, the Commissioners Court discussed the possible adoption of economic development policy and revised draft policies. The public was given an opportunity to comment during public hearings on November 8th. The Commissioners also made comments and asked questions. After the last meeting, the County Attorney's Office made additional revisions and policies in response to the comments and concerns raised by the Commissioners Court and the citizens. The adoption of economic development policy does not mean the county will definitely give tax abatements or tax rebate incentives of any kind. Adoption of a policy creates a framework for applicants to request incentives and set forth a process and procedures that the county will utilize when evaluating applications. It helps applicants determine for themselves whether their proposal project is appropriate for Aransas County to even consider. Giving applicants guidelines and criteria before they ever submit an application enables them to self-evaluate projects and take actions that may include looking for new ideas and altogether or making changes that result in project better reflect the priorities of Aransas County. As a result, the applicants of the county will be less likely to waste time and money on the preparation and evaluation of drafting documents for projects that would not be eligible for incentive. The policy we are considering today was not drafted by the Aransas County Partnership Economic Development Corporation. While the EDC did provide an initial suggested policy that helped us get started, the policies in the current form is very different. The policy now includes information about all the different types of incentives that may be offered in a single policy document, along with application instructions and forms. It also contains more detailed guidelines and criteria to be considered when reviewing an application or incentives. The revised policy that is before us today includes important changes that from the vision we saw in November 8th. For an example, a new requirement has been added that at least 30 days prior to the consideration of incentive agreement, public hearing must be held to ensure citizens are given an opportunity to weigh in. Additionally, the policy now specifies that attainability workforce housing is housing that will be available for rent below market value. Economic development does not mean that everything needs to change. However, for communities to thrive, there must be employment opportunities and revenue for the government services. The goals are to retain jobs, to bring new jobs, and encourage investment in our county. The county itself will not be bringing jobs. That requires action from the private sector. One way to encourage private sector to bring jobs here instead of somewhere else is to have an economic development policy in place so interested parties will not want the county. The interested parties will now know that the county might be willing to do it and help a project with more feasibility. Now I prepared this for this is my part of why I'm for this, and I believe we have several people that want to speak, but if we'll start off with my.
Do we have a second to your motion yet?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't hear it. I'm sorry.
Mike Meeks,
Before we hear presentations, can I make one wording suggestion? I'm afraid I'll forget it in the confusion as we start discussing other issues. But over the weekend, somebody asked me, and I thought it was a reasonable request, if in the policy where we discuss the need for below market housing, if we would just include the word substantially below market, the idea being it shouldn't, nobody should try to game the system by making it a buck below market, which I think was the intent anyway. I would be amending the motion to say if it's approved, to be approved with the addition of that word, if county attorney's office does not think that's a problem with language.
Commissioner, I think that I understand your intent. Keeping in mind, though, the Commissioner's Court would always have the opportunity to look at the application with the proposal of what the actual rental rate would be to determine if it's low enough, if it's far enough below market rate to be acceptable.
I realize.
Right.
And that was actually the answer I gave to my constituent. And at the same time, I think it's reasonable to tell the public, we're saying right up front that the intent is, your application, don't come to us with anything unless you can say in good faith, it's substantially below market. We really mean it when we say below market.
I had one thing that I kind of wanted to look at too, under page 13, item K. It gives, Jen has explained to me what is meant by that whole thing. But from the very beginning, I've felt like our rebate abatement issue should not exceed 5 years. I would just like to give that for consideration. But I'll go for the 8, but I think 5 years is more reasonable.
Commissioner Russo, you had some.
I have my own comments, which I was going to wait until the public had heard, but I have two from, excuse me, constituents.
Yes.
Okay. And I just received these this morning, and I will get them to the county clerk after this meeting. First one is from Jennifer Shaw, 442 Augusta Drive. Okay. Dear Commissioners, I'm writing to oppose item 13, which is on Commissioners Court agenda for December 13th, 2021. The agenda item proposes to adopt Resolution R 27, 2021, approving and adopting the Aransas County Economic Development Policy. I ask you to vote against the resolution and the county economic development policy behind it. Here's one of many reasons why. In Texas, local taxpayers are burdened with having to finance local public schools out of their own pockets. That is on top of county real estate taxes, plus city/town real estate taxes if one happens to live there. All in all, real estate taxes for homeowners in Texas are astronomically high compared with real estate taxes in other parts of the Southwest. Take my family's house, for example. We paid $253,000 for the house in 2013. It was in clean move-in condition. The house is now 23 years old. Our total real estate taxes for 2021 are $4,242. In contrast, in Nevada, a $250,000 purchase price house in Las Vegas is taxed at $2,507. In round numbers, that's a $1,700 net difference. $1,700 higher real estate taxes in Aransas County for a house that is less than 2,000 square feet in size. Both Texas and Nevada are no income tax states. Both states have substantial tax revenues from their principal industries. The difference is because local taxpayers in Texas have to pay full freight for their own public schools. Plus, a very significant portion of their real estate taxes are redistributed by the state to subsidize schools in poor counties. Which gets me back to Aransas County. All of the grandiose plans for economic development, which are being jammed down the throats of real estate taxpayers, will produce increased populations for our county and increase the population of students in local schools. As a result of these economic development policies, like the one you propose to enact today, my family's real estate taxes are going to increase because the demand for seats in our local public schools are going to increase. The new housing unit being stimulated into existence by your policy to provide workforce housing for local businesses or for industrial employers in San Patricio County will not pay the full freight of paying in full for the cost of even one child in the new housing unit you stimulate. Heaven help the ordinary real estate taxpayer. Each new housing unit you stimulate into being built is likely to add at least 2 new children to our school system, if not 3. Each new housing unit is not going to pay enough money in real estate taxes to make it a wash in terms of educating those new students. We, the existing real estate taxpayers, are going to be forced by your economic development policies to pay for them. I'm already using 1 full month's Social Security check to pay our annual school tax alone. Plus, out of our meager savings, a separate $853 per year for county real estate taxes on top of $1,000 per year in city real estate taxes. Then, to add insult to injury, your economic development policies propose to give discounts on real estate taxes to new businesses, which draw more people to Aransas County, and to the landlords of new workforce housing units, which are rentals. In some cases, your policies propose that real estate taxes be waived entirely for new businesses and employers and for apartment landlords. I fully expect that when the economic development deals are done, we will also see some sort of real estate tax abatement scam for the new single-family housing tracts to house all those new people and their children. The economic development policy you propose to enact today will take money out of my family's pockets to subsidize someone else's life in Aransas County and to subsidize someone else's business here. The economic development policy you propose to enact today will not put a dime in my pocket or that of my husband. We get absolutely nothing out of these economic development policies, but you increase our real estate taxes overall with no end in sight to the real estate tax increases we have to pay for your promoting economic growth. Clearly, members of the Commissioners Court who vote for these economic policies are not fiscal conservatives, not low tax advocates, and not working to protect Aransas County residents like my husband and me. Instead, you're proposing to turn Aransas County into a socially engineered socialist bastion like Sweden or Norway. You members of the Commissioners Court are going to tax ordinary people out of their homes exactly like what happened in Austin and Travis County. I've had two dear friends forced to sell their longtime homes in Austin and move away because they didn't have enough income to pay their ridiculously high real estate taxes, and they weren't even 65 years old or retired. Just last summer, I found a man out on the breakwater near our Maritime Museum crying. I asked him what was wrong and if I could help. He told me, I'm going to lose my house here in Rockport because I can't afford to pay the real estate taxes on it anymore. How many of your constituents are going to suffer the consequences of your actions? And I think New Braunfels is a traffic congestion hellhole and place I'd never want to live. It's nothing to be proud of. My husband and I certainly don't want you to turn Aransas County into New Braunfels. I will be thinking of the 5 of you on the Commissioners Court in January when I write our ridiculously high 4242 real estate tax check to the Aransas County office. Jennifer Shaw.
Okay.
The other is,
Please remember 5 minutes.
I know, I looked to see if
Yeah.
Colin was timing me and he wasn't. Okay, this one is very short. Okay, you can time this one short. Okay, good morning, Pat. I apologize for missing about today's agenda. I am not able to participate, but if you get a chance, please read this comment. This is his comment. I support well-considered economic development initiatives but the policies should be very thoroughly vetted. The public had little, if any, opportunity to review the proposal, item 3 in today's agenda, in its final form. I ask the court to defer action on that until the next meeting to give us time to consider it. Thank you. Tom Redino, 183 Heron Oaks. That's it.
Okay. Mr. Meigs, do you want to hear all the comments before you speak? Okay. Brett Bolton, are you, or Nancy, either one? Or both of you? Are they there? Okay. Scott Hines. Please remember you 5 minutes.
It'll be short.
Okay.
Scott Heim, 611 North Fulton Beach Road. Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer continuing to insist what they're doing benefits the little people. Yet they're creating billionaires faster than any time in history. And inflation is at a 40-year high, and it's the little people who struggle to put gas in their cars or buy food. So whose interest are they really representing? A small number of people in this town insist that rampant development will benefit the little people. But look around and it's clear that it's the little people who keep urging you not to do these things. Do they just not know what's good for them and you do? Or are you representing other interests just like your federal counterparts? I know that you can't argue with a closed mind, which is why my comments today have no hope of changing your votes, but they might just change some votes in the upcoming elections. So I have just one question. The plans that the city, the EDC, and you are making will fundamentally transform this community. You won't talk about it, but we all know it to be true. It's inevitable. So my question is this. What is it that you dislike so much about the way Aransas County currently is that makes you so determined to turn it into something different?
Thank you. Jeff Hutt. Five minutes, remember.
Yes, sir. Jeff Hutt, 2201 Prairie Road. This seems like an interesting thing that in America, we're even having to talk about tax incentives. Historically, you look back and the Tea Party was itself protest against tax incentives. The British were going to give free taxes to the British East India Company to sell tea into the United States. Bostonians railed against it, dumped tea in the water. Same thing happened in 1861. People from our great state of Texas decided to leave the Union because they did not want to see the federal government using federal money for improvements. Mr. Meek here has talked about how the reason why we know this is successful is because 94% of counties or something like that does that. This really seems to me the same argument that my daughter comes and tells me when she wants to do something that everybody else is doing it. And I use the same kind of analogy with her that I like to use with y'all. If everybody is doing crack, it doesn't make it right. We know one thing about tax abatements, tax incentives, this type of policy, because we can see it because California started it in the 1960s. Right now, we're having Californians leave California and come to Texas because of these policies. And what did these policies do? You look around the state and everywhere they were enacted, they drove up property taxes and they drove up appraisal values. Now, I'm 48 years old. I've got another 17 years left till I get taxed, till my taxes get frozen at 65. My taxes can go up 10% every year. That's 170% increase in my property value over the next 18 years. What is going to happen here is you guys are going to raise taxes, you're going to raise property values, but all of you here and most of the individuals who sit here are over 65. Your taxes are frozen and you also have homestead. So you guys are effectively voting to raise taxes on other people's property when you yourself will not have to suffer from your own decisions. As Mr. Heim said, like, it's hard to argue with a closed mind. I believe your mind is already made up. But for the rest of us, could you please forego your over 65 tax freeze and your homestead exemption, so you have to suffer from the same consequences of your policies that the rest of us do? Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Rutledge.
Thank you, Judge. Commissioners, like everyone that's spoken here earlier, I believe some of you, your mind's made up. And your mind's made up because you might have more information than the rest of the commissioners. I'll say that I've been to every meeting where the tax incentive policies that were created by the EDC, they were commissioned by the LGC in December of 2020 to go out and write policies. They've had almost 12 months to do that. Our county attorney has had about 45 days to look at them. She's made some minor changes, not major changes, and I appreciate those. But are they enough? Because there's glaring open problems in these policies. I want to talk about them. I appreciate that the micro hospital is going to be turned over in the GLO. And the reason that is because that project's not financially feasible. So why is hospital in this policy? We've already determined that that's not financially feasible. So if you're determined to have a policy, you need to change this policy, and you need to make sure that there's a committee of professionals like we've already had that will review, not just an application, a template form with really very little detail. Because I've looked at that template, and what do we have in there? We don't have any information about the financial feasibility of these projects. And if you want to look at some other counties or communities, just look to San Patricio and look to Nueces County, where the windmill farms protested their tax appraisal rate after their abatement was over, and they've gotten in a big lawsuit, and citizens over there are questioning that. Nueces County, the same thing happened with Flint Hills. Where are the protections for these? The majority of people have opposed them, and if you're going to have to do them, you need to make sure that the citizens are fully involved and that the policies are fully defined and fully vetted. On page 23, you're going to consider incentives under 381 for workforce housing, things like this. What is that? What is the market rate? It needs to be fully defined. Is that based on vacation rentals? Is that a changing target? If $1,200 is the market rate for Pearl Point apartment, are we going to have a market rate apartment eligible for incentive that's $1,199? How long does that rent have to stay that way? What happens after the project is over? What is attainable workforce housing? Who knows what that means? Put us some definitions in here. Below market rate, define it. Appointed committee members. This is probably the biggest area of this policy where you have deficiencies. There's a committee an Aransas County Economic Development Committee that will be created here. And I think that I like that name because it's changed. It was a tax compliance committee prior to that, but I think you'll come out with a little bit more honesty that this is a committee for the EDC. This is a committee for a private group of investors where backroom deals are going to be made and the applications are going to come in and the citizens are going to have very little information. Are we going to get 30 days in advance the project description, the full application? Are we going to know what it is? Because when you look in here and it talks about proprietary information, there's a lot of information that citizens won't get. We have no idea about these projects. So give us some definitions. Tell us what citizens will have access to. That 30-day period means nothing if we don't know anything about the project, if we don't have any financial information. The city of Rockport has a tax increment finance policy. Tax increment finance is with, or it doesn't have it yet, but tax increment finance is in here. It's in this policy. And it's talking about reinvesting county money into a policy that's not even created yet. Tax increment finance should be deleted from this policy because that doesn't exist yet. Tell us with full disclosure and definitions what these policies are. And probably my top concern is this policy sets up policy and program for economic development. In the world of federal funding, a program is an actual funding source. Are we funding the Aransas County EDC? Because we funded Kim Faust to work for the EDC, basically. She did almost all of their back work. We're going to advertise these EDC policies. Isn't that what the EDC does? Because their marketing strategy, I have it. Do y'all have it? It's $160,000 a year over the next 4 years. Tell us how much this is going to cost us in regards to administration, staff. Are we funding the EDC through these policies? Let us know. Thank you.
Thank you. And no, we're not funding the EDC. But all right, George Reichert, please.
Good morning, Your Honor and Commissioners. We residents of the city have been fighting a mixed-use zoning for over a year now, and we haven't really had a good chance to look over this policy. We are still dealing with issues from the Hurricane Harvey, so we would wish that you would put this aside and let's get Harvey out of the way. The county and city should work together for the betterment of the people that, and these things could all be done. We need to move on and rebuilding the aquarium. We need to move on and repairing our streets. There are street signs and street lights that are still gone since Harvey. Even the sheriff's office, if you go by there at night, it's pitch black. The flags are flying in the dark. A lot of this is an easy fix. A lot of our drainage ditches need cleaning. There are buildings collapsed right off our main streets in the center of town from Hurricane Harvey. There is an abandoned nursing home in the south part of town that needs to be, that was destroyed by Harvey, that needs to be removed. Some of these things may be in the city, but the city is in the county, and we vote for you to represent us. We will have, thank goodness, new leadership pretty soon in the city. We feel that this EDC stuff is being shoved down our throats. We had so much to do to handle with the other things and fighting the mixed zoning and stuff that we really haven't had much chance to look this over. I represent over 300 people in South Rockport neighbors. I cannot tell you how every one of them feel about this, but I know the majority of them are much against it and wish you would turn it down. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. I don't have anyone else, so Mr. Meeks.
Thank you, Judge. I've assisted the Aransas County Partnership EDC since August on some recovery and sustainability efforts. While reviewing some dozen or so studies, it became really clear to me the commonalities and recommendations. One major one was the need to have incentive policies in place so that you, the local government entities, could be proactive in a control position to take advantage of opportunities to not only recover, but to sustain your economy. Jennifer's done an outstanding job pinning these needed policies and applications. They're much different than what that I presented, and I support them wholeheartedly. State law requires that you have such a policy to be able to consider and to follow through on any proposals you deem worthy. Your role is clearly spelled out. Terminology is defined. Your objectives are clearly stated in the policy. Guidelines and criteria are clearly outlined for applicants, and you tell them what you might consider. Notice to the public is more than adequate, and information will be posted on the county website. Eligible business sectors are clearly outlined that match up with what was recommended in the studies that will provide needed citizen services to keep the economy sustainable. Each application will be evaluated on its own merit, and the court has no obligation to enter into any agreement unless they feel it is advantageous to the county. Some of you may not be in favor of particular incentives to stimulate the local economy, but voting for these policies to be adopted today does not mean you're in favor of any particular incentive. It simply means you're giving yourselves and the staff, your county staff, the ability to evaluate and shape proposals to the county's advantage. So thank you for your attention, Judge and Commissioners, and I urge passage of this agenda item.
I want to thank the presenters for coming and expressing their understandings and attitudes. I'm a little bit confused here as how economic incentives are going to cost. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Go right ahead. I'm sorry.
Sorry, I didn't have your name. Your name.
Morning, Judge and
Good morning.
Commissioners. Thank you for this opportunity. And my name is John Heffron. I live at 210 Champions Drive, and I'm speaking here this morning on my own behalf and also on behalf of a general purpose political action committee that's been registered with the state of Texas Ethics Commission called the Aransas Community Values Fund. We support passage of the proposed EDP policy and guidelines because we think they're in the best interest of the community. And as Commissioner Rousseau said in her prayer very aptly this morning, I think we all want things that are in the best interest of the community. We may just not agree on what those are and how to get there. But we've had an EDP policy. It's stale, it's gone. We need a new one. The EDP is an integral part of the 2018 long-term recovery plan that all the government entities approve. It's not the only part, but it's an integral part of it. And why? In a nutshell, the EDP and guidelines are designed to lower unemployment, create new jobs, strengthen local businesses, and increase tax revenues. It wasn't written by the EDC. It was written by the county's legal team, and as I understand it, it complies in all respects with Texas law. So we need to take action now. This has been under consideration for more than a year. We need to get on with it because we need to get on with the recovery from Harvey. Now, some of us said we need tax relief and not tax giveaways. Well, I don't see anything in this EDP guidelines that constitutes a tax giveaway. This is not a tax entitlement program. As I read it, every proposed project is measured by an acceptable rate of return to the taxpayers. That no current tax rate values are involved, and that every project has to have an additional incremental tax revenue from each project. So the key to success is going to be how the Commissioners Court and the committee you appoint execute. You can do bad deals or you can do good deals in the best interest of the community. It's going to be up to you. It's going to be up to execution. and with public participation and the like, I think you'll get there. So, another question that's been asked is we need tax relief. Why don't we give the community a tax abatement? Well, the simple answer to that is that the EDP and guidelines are to do just that. Broaden the tax base in the county so that residential property owners do not continue to pay a disproportionate share of the real estate taxes compared to businesses. In Aransas County, residents pay 87% of the ad valorem tax volume. Businesses pay 13%. In the state, that ratio is 40-60. 40 for businesses, excuse me, 40 per residential and 60 to non-residential. Well, now we're never going to get to those sorts of ratios. I understand that. We're not Houston. We're not a big city, but every percentage point we can move the needle with more businesses paying for taxes, that's going to lower the burden on the residential taxpayer, and it's going to broaden the base and give the tax relief they talk about. So there's one more point I want to address, and it's this issue of picking winners and losers. I think the county will be picking the winners in every occasion because the way these policies and guidelines are drafted, the winners have to be the residential taxpayers in the county. There has to be incremental tax increases. And so, I urge you all to pass this today with an overwhelming majority, and we can get on with it. Thank you.
Thank you. Did I miss anyone else that I didn't get a paper? Okay, Commissioner Cheney.
Okay, I thank you for coming up there because you said some of the things I was going to say. There seems to be a common thread here that tax abatements, I'm not talking about refunds, but tax abatements are going to cost us money. Well, it seems to me like if I bring a new business into town and we have an opportunity to get a new business, it makes sense to bring them in during construction at a lesser value because they're not creating any value at the time. But the minute they start creating value, we need to start getting revenue on it. That doesn't mean that my kids, I've got 4 living with me right now, that they're going to pay additional taxes because we gave an abatement. Okay, because an abatement doesn't mean we're not giving them anything except an opportunity to get up and get established. That's the reason why I said earlier today that I don't really like the 8 years. I like 5 years, because if you can't get a business up and running where it's making a profit in 5 years, then you really are going to have problems at 10 years. So I think there's a common misunderstanding that by passing a policy that deals with new businesses coming in or new businesses that are here that are expanding is going to cost the residents individually money. I don't see that. I mean, I'm pretty dumb. I've got an MBA and a Master of Science in Education. That don't make me smart. That just makes me understand the use of money. If I have a business that potentially is worth $5 million, that's a small business. If I have a business that's worth $5 million and I have a choice between somebody that's going to give me no tax increments in the first 2 or 3 years, and it's going to take me 4 years in my business plan to be able to get to where I'm making a profit, and I got somebody over here that wants to help me with that particular burden of just the county taxes, we can't give a rebate for school districts. We can't give a rebate for the city. We're only dealing with county taxes. And our county taxes are less this year than they were before because of growth. Well, if growth is going to lower my taxes, then how in the world can I oppose growth? Now, I understand the argument that the gentleman made about it's going to bring more people in, and that's true. Whenever I came to Rockport 27 years ago, HEB was a pine forest, but it's not a pine forest now, and I'm glad HEB is here. I mean, it's helped my family over these 27 years. Now, I've dealt with businesses in other areas, and I have just recently helped a business locate into Sanpat County. And they located in Sanpat County, or in the process of locating in Sanpat County, not because of anything I said, but because of the fact I let them know that there were some tax incentives available there, and it was a little closer to their marketplace. And we didn't have anything in Aransas County in which met their needs that they could afford. So I don't understand how we tie trying to help businesses come in to add 5 people, 10 people, 20 people, or 30 people, or whatever it is going to cost additional. How is the county going to be responsible, or why would the county even think about being responsible for giving them money? This is not a giveaway. This is a sliding chart. I start out as they did with one of the businesses that they had in Sanpat County. And I just know this about Sanpat County because I was a little bit involved in that. But they started off making $2,400 a year in property taxes. Within 5 years, it was making nearly $100,000 a year in property taxes. Now, tell me what about that is a bad deal? You know, I just don't understand it. I understand that nobody wants more government intervention into anything that they do, but this is not government. This is government protection. This is, you come to us, and if it feels like it's something that the community, Mr. Hutt, I'm sorry, I have the floor. Thank you. Huh? Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were interrupting. Excuse me. I apologize. But I just don't understand why it is that we can't get our terms correct. This is not a tax giveaway because those taxes aren't there now anyway. And if that business decides to come here because we'll give them X percent over a 5-year period or 8-year period, 10-year period, whatever it is that the court decides to go with, and they'll come here and they'll bring 5 new families into the community. You know, this is not a retirement community. This is a growth community. And the people that came here to retire, they have the best of all the worlds. Whenever they came to retire, there probably wasn't an HEB or a Walmart or some of the businesses down here. But this is something that I think in the long run will be really good. I am not in favor of tax rebates. I am in favor of tax abatements. Thank you very much. And Mr. Jeff, I do apologize. I thought you said. I just,
All right, thanks. Ms. Russo.
Thank you, Judge. I do have some concerns about this, but my first concern is that I first learned that this was going to be on the agenda when I received an email from the New PAC Association last Tuesday morning. When I received the agenda from the court on late Wednesday evening, it wasn't on the agenda. And as a commissioner, I like to think that I'm aware of what's going on in the county, although not always. So then I was surprised and disappointed when Thursday morning I was notified there would be an amended agenda and the EDC policy would be added to that. So the fact that outside entities had information before a sitting commissioner on the court, to me, is concerning. That's one statement. The other is when we met and discussed this back in late October, early November, there was general consensus, not from 5 people on the court, but there was general consensus from 3 or 4 by our comments that if a supermajority is required by the state legislature is necessary to either amend or repeal this within the 2-year term that it's in effect, that it should then require a supermajority vote to adopt the policy. And although it may be in this document, I certainly did not see it in the document. I have expressed numerous times a concern that the county is not in the business of making loans and grants for business. We are in the business of providing services to our community, which concern a lot about the court system, about the sheriff's office, about court records, documents, keeping those protected and safe for future generations, and providing other services as needed. But we are not in the business of providing loans and grants. That's what banks are for. We are also, I do not believe, in the business, as it says on page 2, of promoting or advertising the county and its vicinity, or conducting a solicitation program to attract conventions, visitors, and businesses. That's a function of the chamber. And Diane is here and has done an excellent job with those tasks over the last several years. And I've been a resident in the community for over 14 years, but I've been coming to Rockport for about 34 years. So the county is not in that business. That's a Chamber of Commerce or a Convention and Visitors Bureau activity. Another item on page 2, to support a comprehensive literacy program for the benefit of county residents. Again, I do not believe that is a function of county services. I am not totally familiar with everything that comes out of the Texas Association of Counties, but I am aware of many of the services that we're to provide, and this is not one of them. If there's some institution that wants to perhaps use the county library to provide literacy program services, I know they have that in Corpus Christi. I know we have a lot of retired teachers who can maybe provide that, but I do not agree with these sorts of statements being included in here. This is very overreaching for what I think we are to be responsible for as county commissioners. I also have a concern about the appointment of committee members as found on page 3. We talked about this during our first meeting. There was one member of the audience who is also a member of the EDC, a very strident member of the EDC, and she almost demanded that the number be increased from 5 to at least 7 or more. And I see that that request was recognized and entered into this document when those of some of the commissioners have not been. So I have a concern about that. I agree if there has to be any kind of policy and abatement at all, and I'm not sure there does, that 5 years is reasonable. I don't believe we will ever be like San Patricio and Portland and Gregory and Taft. And I don't believe that we want to be. And I don't believe that anyone who lives here moved here so that we could be like Portland and Aransas Pass and those other communities. Some of those people are moving here to get away from what their communities are becoming. I don't want to have to move away from Rockport because it's no longer what attracted me. I have many disappointments in this, but my biggest appointment is that when we did talk about it at our other meeting, we were very firm in saying that when the document was provided, certainly to the commissioners, I don't know about to the outside members of the community, that we would allow 30 minutes for, 30 days. I would be fine with a minimum of 2 weeks to our next court session, but I do not see the reason to put this on the document today. It's almost 40 pages and it has been rewritten. And we have to decide this right now, right before Christmas, right before possibly people will be gone on holiday and not here to vote the next time. If they're not here to vote the next time, then we can vote on it in January. And I understand that it's been said, if we don't have this in place, we can't give any abatements. But then I'm just curious how we were able to give an abatement to the Harvey Housing, which is the Pearl Project now, without it in place, unless it fell under the other one, which expired already. Is that what the case is? All right, those are my concerns. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. In answer to your first point about an entity getting it before it was on the agenda, that was the EDC called me and asked me if it was going to be on, if we could get it on the agenda, and I said sure. So that's how they knew. Then when the agenda time came out, one of my staff that's in charge of the agenda had some personal time that she needed to take, and she wasn't there when the amendment came out. And It was just a mix-up that happened, and I thought I explained that to you earlier, but I guess I missed it. But that's the only reason that it was the entity that you were talking about. I can't even remember who it was.
The PAC.
The PAC knew about it before it was on the agenda.
May I respond to a couple of the comments?
Yes.
The first thing I want to say is that the timing, as the judge said, that was bizarre to me, that you got an email from someone on Tuesday saying that this would be on the agenda because, like the judge said, we know that we've only talked to a couple of people. I had sent it to Mr. Meek to look at once I knew that I had finished the revisions. I did send the request to Tracy to put it on the agenda. On the first version that was posted, it was accidentally left off. So we did do an amendment to add it where it was highlighted to show that it had been added. It was always intended to be on the first version that was posted. I also want to mention the supermajority to adopt a policy. Generally, there are statutes set forth what types of votes are required for certain things to be approved by a commissioner's court. Very few things require a supermajority, and only those things required by statute do we ever have a supermajority for. If the commissioner's court would like to discuss doing that, I misunderstood that that's what you were asking for last time, and I apologize. If you would like to agree among yourselves that you will only adopt this if it's approved by the supermajority, then one of you could make a motion to do so before you vote on the policy itself. Also, as far as the promoting of other businesses, making loans and grants, those items, literacy, we discussed that at the last meeting on November the 4th, and I mentioned that under Chapter 381, there are certain types of programs that a county may use incentive to support. So what I did was include all of the different options available to a county under Chapter 381. It does not mean that Aransas County will choose to adopt any agreement or contract where those are the purposes. I just put them in there because it's allowed. And I like the policy to include information that tells the commissioner's court what its options are. It doesn't mean you'll choose to exercise those options, but they do exist under the law. As far as having definitions in place, for example, tax increment financing is defined in the policy, and we discussed that before too. The reason why I included that is because it's a phrase or an acronym that's often thrown around when people talk about economic development, and not everyone knows what it means. So I did include a definition for that reason. I also want to speak to briefly the tax issue and how it works with the way that abatements happen. If I currently own a piece of property that is taxed at $1,000 a year, and I develop it and I increase the value of everything on the property, and now it's $10,000 a year, abatement would mean that I only pay less on the incremental increase, which is the $9,000 for whatever period of time, for whatever percentage the commissioner's court agrees to. I'm always going to pay at least what I always paid. And the abatement will only be on a portion of the increased value. Does that make more sense? I hope so. The other thing that I wanted to say is that 7 members of the committee was always in the policy. It was in the policy we discussed in November for sure, and I believe in October as well. And during the last meeting, Commissioner Russo, you and I think Commissioner Laubach did talk about having 5 members only. And at the end of the meeting, you said you withdrew your request to reduce it to 5 because we talked about the need to have room on the committee for professionals who may have additional experience or education to weigh in on a specific project. And that's why it was kept at 7. This has been a long-going process for me. I've been working on this since sometime in September. And this version, I do believe, is, while inspired by Mr. Meek's proposals that he brought to us, it is very different. And I did that for a reason. I will take the blame or the credit, whichever way you see fit, for spending the time to make sure this policy represents this county and what the priorities are in this county. Also putting forth enough guidelines and criteria that hopefully people who are bringing projects to you know before they ever come what you really are looking for them to do for this community and for this county before they bring a proposal. I know that was long-winded. I apologize, but I felt it necessary to clear up some of those things. Just know, please, that I certainly am listening to everything that you say when we come to these meetings and do my very best to incorporate the things you ask for. And I apologize for missing what you meant about the supermajority. Thank you for letting me.
And Jennifer, I thank you for your comments. I have no fault with the work that you have performed for this court or for the county. And you are right, I still am against those grants and loans. I understand that they are allowed and that we don't have to give them. My concern is if they're on paper, it's just like the mixed use and the co-living arrangements that were in the city's comprehensive plan. Once it's on paper, then there's more of an obligation or a sense of entitlement to ask for them or a responsibility to grant them. So my understanding from you, your comments, those were options. We're including them because the legislature allows us to include them. I have a very strong reservation against them. And actually, during the discussion we've had today and talking about that committee, I'm wondering if this is passed, and I hope it is not voted on today, but if this is passed, that committee might possibly be like the committees that we pick to rate RFPs that come in, that rather than be a standing committee, it could be a committee that changes with each tax abatement because of the special qualities that are being requested. Because, and I didn't come in here with that idea, but in listening to the comments and the feedback, I think that might be a better idea than having certain people that you know are always going to be on that committee, rather than we could just pick people who have special expertise depending on whatever the nature of the business is that's requesting an abatement. And I don't know if that's a possibility or not, but I certainly would think that would be better.
I have a few comments as well, as if everyone else is finished.
Yes, ma'am.
I believe Commissioner Rousseau is raised a point that's important to me as well, and that is the state law allows us to do a number of things that I still think are a bad idea for us to do. And so it's not always an answer to me that state law allows something to the question, should it be in our policy? Our policy ought to be stripped down to exactly those things that we actually have strong support for doing. So I agree, it's not a good idea to make the document as all-encompassing as possible. I realize it gives more freedom later, but freedom's not always what we're looking for. Sometimes we're looking for a consensual, a communal agreement that our government does certain things and doesn't do other things, especially if they're costly. A big example of this is the supermajority requirement. We don't have any choice about the fact that the state law says once we pass this thing, we're stuck with it unless somebody can get a 4 out of 5 vote to amend it or repeal it. We do have the option not to pass it voluntarily unless there is a 4 out of 5 vote available to approve it. And if that is too much of a stretch, I think it would be an equally good idea to amend the policy to provide that in the future, when we consider individual tax abatement requests, each of those must be passed by a 4 out of 5 majority. The state law doesn't say anything about our ability to do that. That's entirely up to us. If we want to say that in the future, nothing will happen in the way of a tax abatement unless 4 out of 5 commissioners support it, we're completely free to do that today. And that's what I would urge us to do. That's a change that I would propose to the proposal. I also, like Commissioner Rousseau, really appreciate the work that Jen Osteen has done on this document. I do think it's a huge improvement. It addresses a number of the concerns that I raised about public notice. Probably there is no such thing as a policy that provides for public notice that quite satisfies me, because I would, for instance, not allow a general exception for proprietary information, but would make it strictly a requirement that anything that's legitimately requestable under the Open Records Act must be voluntarily provided up front. I would make no exceptions for anything. People shouldn't have to make an open records request to get anything that's attached to an application. If it's legal, if we're legally required to provide it under an open records request, it should be voluntarily provided right up front, because otherwise we just lose weeks in a 30-day notice period. And that's just not, I think, in the spirit of public involvement in the decisions in the future. Having said all these things, which are all about sort of the procedure of how this thing would be done if it's to be done, I still disagree with the entire idea of having a tax abatement policy. During this process, I have tended to think of this as not so much not making the situation worse, but making it better. If we are going to be entertaining tax abatement proposals, it's better that we do it under a clear policy, especially one that provides clear notice obligations to the public and hearings and deadline, long consideration periods and so forth. But because the state law provides that we cannot consider tax abatement policies, proposals, unless we have a policy. I'm still in the position of not being able to vote for this policy, even though I think it's a better policy than the one that was originally proposed to us, because I think we shouldn't be considering tax abatements at all, and therefore don't want to make any vote that satisfies a procedural requirement that gives us the power later to grant tax abatements. And my views on this, I'll say only briefly, because I've talked about this at length in commissioners' meetings before, are that I guess I disagree with a number of people about the whole purpose of taxes. I think taxes exist to fund essential government services, pretty much, period. I don't think taxes should be used to tinker with communal behavior, to nudge the economy, to encourage some behavior and discourage other behavior. I think taxes ought to be simple, uniform, and as low as humanly possible in order to cover the cost of essential government services. And of course, what goes along with that is I don't like redefining essential government services to include anything that a non-governmental institution can and should be doing instead. I believe that the way to attract capital in business development is to keep taxes low, uniform, and predictable. Absolutely uniform, never, favoring one kind of taxpayer over another. I hear the argument that it would be nice for residential taxpayers if commercial taxpayers had greater taxable value and therefore were shouldering a greater fraction of the tax burden for the county. And I think that will naturally happen if we get more commercial development, which I support. I've never been anti-growth, but I don't think you get there by essentially, bribing businesses to come here by giving them tax breaks. I think businesses will come here if we have our infrastructure under control, our spending under control, and our procedures, open and trustworthy and transparent. I agree with Commissioner Cheney that a 5-year limit is better than a 10-year limit. I propose again the change that we add the word substantial to below market value. I am proposing that the policy be amended. 2 things. That today, I hope somebody who would otherwise have voted yes will vote no, just because if we don't have a 4 out of 5 majority yet, we shouldn't move forward. But even absent that, I think that the policy itself should say that there should be a supermajority 4 out of 5 vote to approve any future tax abatement policy.
I'd like to say I am in favor of bringing forth a policy, but I think enough items have been brought up during this meeting that we should postpone the vote on it and get
I agree.
in and try to work some of these items into the policy.
I realize we've been working on this a long time, and if I were Jen Osteen, I'd be frustrated. And we have had a number of meetings and a lot of discussion, but the nature of the beast is that the public doesn't really get brought into this as quickly as we would like ever. And these things have to percolate through the community for a while we kind of argue with them, argue with ourselves, each other about them, and talk about them online and so forth. And it's not like we're facing a deadline. It would be better if the things we discuss have a chance to sort of trickle out into the community and get discussed. I would prefer bringing this back up in a few weeks or even later.
I think Ms. Osteen's done a really good job here. I just need a little bit more time to study it. I make a motion to table this agenda item.
I second that.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Roll call.
Commissioner Cheney.
Aye.
Commissioner Castro.
I'm sorry, I was reading something.
Table.
To table, thank you.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Castelline.
Aye.
Commissioner Russo.
Aye.
Commissioner Lava.
Aye.
Judge Mills.
Aye. Moving on, discuss, approve, disapprove November 2021 indigent healthcare. I make a motion to approve.
I second that motion.
Motion made.
If you gave a public comment, if you will kindly take one of these, we need to have your information for the minutes. Just email to me, please.
I scribbled it out. I'll send you that sort of-
Represented well.
Try to make it more coherent.
Any discussion about indigent?
Okay, so we were, who made a motion for the healthcare?
I did, and seconded by Commissioner Russo. Roll call.
Commissioner Cheney.
Aye.
Commissioner Castro.
Aye.
Commissioner Russo.
Aye.
Commissioner Lala.
Aye.
Judge Mills.
Aye. Discuss approve. I make a motion to approve the new job description for mechanics for transfer stations. Second, Commissioner Casterline.
I have a question.
Ms. Gonzalez, are you online?
I am.
You want to talk to us?
Yes, this is the budgeted mechanic position that will begin in the 2022 budget.
Okay, and you've discussed this with the new fleet manager or director, Blake Brown, right?
Yes, sir. I spoke with him and David Reed about the position.
Valerie, this is Commissioner Russo. I just have a couple of questions, and I know we approved it, and I think it's a great idea. The pay group, is this the same pay group for a similar position with Road and Bridge?
You would have to ask Linda, but I do believe so.
Okay.
It's the same as the mechanics at Road and Bridge.
Great, thank you. And where will the workstation or the bay be located?
Currently, it will be over at Road and Bridge in the mosquito barn until we get our shop back put up here on the hill. We're still waiting for insurance.
All right, thank you.
Any further discussion?
One quick question, Valerie, is this gonna, is this mechanic initially gonna look at the tractors and the whole scope of the equipment over there as best they can with the facilities they have?
They will be able to do all of our equipment.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Any further discussion? Roll call.
Commissioner Cheney.
Aye.
Commissioner Castro.
Aye.
Commissioner Russo.
Aye.
Commissioner Lala.
Aye.
Judge Mills.
Aye. Item 16.
I move to approve the job description for civil and warrants clerk for the sheriff's office.
Second, Commissioner Casterline. Any discussion?
Was this in the agenda? Or was this in the budget rather?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Can you just, Sheriff, can you just tell us really quickly what it's about?
It's just a housekeeping issue. We've had a position probably 20 years, but there was no job description.
Okay.
Any further discussion? Roll call.
Commissioner Cheney.
Aye.
Commissioner Castro.
Aye.
Commissioner Russo.
Aye.
Commissioner Lala.
Aye.
Judge Mills.
Aye. Unanimous. Approved budget line item transfers and amendments.
We have none at this time, sir.
Motion. Second.
I second that.
Second, Commissioner Russo. Roll call.
Commissioner Cheney.
Aye.
Commissioner Castro.
Aye.
Commissioner Russo.
Aye.
Commissioner Lala.
Aye.
Judge Mills.
Aye. Item 18.
Move to approve accounts payable and payroll and payroll liabilities.
Second that.
Second, Commissioner Cheney. Any discussion?
Anything out of the ordinary?
I just wanted to let y'all know that there is two pieces of equipment with Road and Bridge that are in this accounts payable, the new excavator and the chip paver, which totals $474,000. And there's also $256,000 worth of some of our projects, our FEMA and GLO projects.
Are those engineering payments or?
You know, some
The
of them-
256.
Some of them are actually projects themselves. It may be Broadus, it may be some on different projects, just expenses that we've had. I could tell you in a second if it's engineering.
Are we out of budget? Are we within our budget on all the projects?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And these are just the same as what we've always do. They are projects that we have, we pay in advance. So we will be reimbursed for them.
Sheriff, have we gotten any bids on automobiles yet?
We just kind of thought Sheriff's Association of Texas rebid all the shooters and stuff like that from all vehicles. That's the route we're going. Project that they've been working on a couple of years and rolled out last year. So we don't have to send letters.
Okay.
They've got to respond to this documentation.
All right.
Excuse me, Judge, to answer Commissioner Russo's question, they are mostly engineering. We do have a payment that was made to PGAL and to Don Jackson for some repairs to the annex, some Harvey repairs.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Roll call.
Commissioner Cheney.
Aye.
Commissioner Castro.
Aye.
Commissioner Russo.
Aye.
Commissioner Lawler.
Aye.
Vice Mayor.
Aye. Now is the time for any elected official or department head to bring anything up they'd like to bring up. Yes, sir.
Good morning. Thank you. I'd just like to say that the airport fly-in this last weekend was successful by my definition of success, which is that it was done safely and without any real financial burden or hardship on the airport or the other stakeholders that were at the event. We had a pretty good turnout. Saturday was really tough and really hardline aviation enthusiasts. Commissioner Russo thanks for coming out. But Sunday was a lot better. 4-H was there on Saturday and still made $175. I think it was altogether, giving away the hot dogs. If they'd been there on Sunday, they couldn't get the volunteers, but if they'd been there on Sunday, I think they might have made 1,000. The guy with the food truck did really well. So that was good. So everybody that was supposed to make money made money. It didn't cost the airport a lot. Nobody got hurt. Everything was done safely. And I think we're really looking forward to making this probably a twice a year event, maybe once in June, again in December. We're not competing with other airports for the same kind of event. So thank you very much for letting me do it. And I'll make sure to give you further feedback if I get any.
That's great to hear. I'm sorry I missed it, but I had a grandson playing in the state soccer tournament in Houston. So
Well, not having grandchildren, I was able to get out there, and Saturday was rough, but I talked with a couple of gentlemen who'd flown in from Manville, I think right by Pearland, with their plane, which I forget what type it was, but it was the type of trainer they used before a T6, and they were just so excited to be there. And they have a very heavy plane. They said that's why they could come in. Okay. Okay, good enough.
anyone else? At this time, I'd like to mention, yes.
We have the fee report if anyone has any questions on it.
All right, I'd just like to mention the fact that I'm sure everybody knows that Kim Faust has resigned from her position on the long-term recovery team. So we'll be probably after 4 years, we'll be putting long-term recovery team on the shelf. It's been, the rest of the positions have been absorbed either in the county or they found other jobs. Just like to thank her and the long-term recovery team for their hard work and continue. John's got a new job now, but I can't remember the title we gave him, but something, Director of Community Development or something. I don't know, but that was it, right? Anyway, that's all I have to say. Pardon?
I have something else.
Yes.
First, congratulations, John. I know you'll do an excellent job, but you may need to clone yourself. This information was presented to me. I have been attending the Navigation District meetings since I took office in January. I've only missed a couple. And I've just been going to I'm not the liaison, I believe Commissioner Casterline is, but I've been going to acquaint myself. Oh, I am? Okay. Well, then I'm glad I've been going.
Yeah, you are now.
So I've been going to acquaint myself better with the district and their activities. This information, as I say, was presented to me over the weekend, and it's from the Water Code chapter, and it's section 62-117. And I'll give this to the county clerk after this meeting. But it's talking about the responsibilities of the navigation district. And I certainly will make this available to Malcolm Decow, who is the chair of the board, and to Keith Barrett. But it's section 62.117, annual report. The commission shall make an annual report of its official acts and file it with the clerk of the commissioners court on or before January 1st of each year. The report shall include in detail the kind, character, and amount of work done in the district, the cost of the work, the amount paid out on order and for what purpose paid, and other data necessary to show the conditions of improvements made under the provisions of this chapter. And this initially was adopted in 1971 and then updated, I believe, in 2019. And I am not aware of any annual reports that have been made. And I will be asking about those, like I mentioned, with the navigation district. And if they weren't aware that this had changed, then certainly this is a good time to let them know so they can prepare it for next year.
Yes, ma'am. I just found out about it this few days ago myself.
From past involvement with them, one thing that I can tell you, the water code, when they set up a navigation district, the way they set it up determines what sections apply to it. So it takes a pretty intense reading and reading the documents that they were formed under to really identify the ones that they're responsible to do or what they
Okay.
can and can't.
Thank you. I believe this was well researched, but I'll make sure.
Thank you. Any other announcements? If not, do I have a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion made.
Second.
Second 3 times. All those in favor?
Aye.